Hello and welcome to Life.ev. This is episode number 40. I'm your host, Ajit Panicker, and I lead an air conditioning company, Nova, and Pure Blue, a tech startup in the air conditioning domain. Every Saturday at 11 a.m., join us for conversations that go beyond business growth, focusing on the values that fuel it. Let's embark on a journey to uncover our true purpose and how we can grow by enriching our lives. Welcome to Life.ev, where we explore values in life and business. And as always, I have with me Vivek Asrani. Hi, Vivek, how are you doing?
Hi Ajit, unbelievable 40th episode today. How time flies, man.
That's right, 40 weeks in a row. Well, for some of you who are joining us for the first time, Vivek Asrani is the driving force behind Camo Fastener Company, a trailblazing company in the industrial fastener sector. What sets Vivek apart is his deep engagement with the exploration of values. Now, for close to 4 years, he has dedicatedly penned his reflections on this topic every week. His insightful thoughts are accessible on his website, vivekasrani.com. Additionally, Vivek has authored the book One Day at a Time Reflections from Times of Silence, which further delves into his journey and insights. This thought provoking read is available on Amazon, offering readers a chance to engage with his profound understanding of values and their role in both personal and professional lives. Well, in today's episode of Life.ev, we are delving into learning to see the dance and not the dancer. Vivek, over to you. Let's hear your reflections on this.
So Ajit, this reflection was written inspired by a true story. So there was this man who was playing in a subway in Washington D.C. He was playing the violin. He played for about 45 minutes. More than 1,000 people heard him. The average waiting time was, I think, about 10 or 15 seconds. At the end of that 45-minute performance, he made $52. The violin which he was playing on cost $2 million. He had just completed a show in Boston, sold to a full house at $200 a ticket. And this was an experiment organized by the Washington Post. And he was playing, by the way, one of the most intricate pieces of Mozart. So Washington Post had done this experiment that when something is completely out of context, how do people perceive it? And this inspired the reflection that do we really see the dance or are we seeing the dancer? Very often we perceive things in life, Ajit, based on our preconditioned filters, our expectations, and who is saying something or what is the setting in which something is being said or done or performed. So that is the form. And the second is the substance as to what is being performed. Now, we lay so much of emphasis sometimes on the form that we lose out on the substance when the context is very different. To give you an example, we might be walking uh, and see some paintings, whether it be in a regular art gallery or sometimes even just on the pavement, and we may not even give it a second look. And yet when that artist becomes extremely famous, we would look at the same painting very differently. The substance hasn't changed. What has changed is the form, that now suddenly there is popularity. Suddenly it's in a context which is like, oh, wow, right? Sometimes the best meal could be in a restaurant which is not very well known. In fact, let me share with you something that happened with me in Chennai. I was staying in T Nagar and I was done with my work by 7 in the evening. I went for a walk and there was this hole in the wall place serving idlis, and I would have 99 out of 100 times just passed it without giving it a second look, except that one thing caught my attention. There were 25 chairs outside. And I said to myself, I said, if they are expecting 25 people to wait in queue to get into this restaurant, there must be something in the food. So I walked in and I had one of the most delicious meals I've ever had. And the place is Murugan Idli House, and which later on I discovered they are quite popular in Chennai and they have a lot of outlets. So the whole reflection was that how are we perceiving life, people, experiences, opportunities? Are we doing it through our preconditioned filters, or are we doing it unfiltered and experiencing something in its purest form, whether it is popular or not, whether it is well known or not, whether it comes packaged in a form which is the wow factor or not? And I think that, to my mind, was the trigger to the entire reflection. And Ajit, herein lies my own experience, at least. And I'll, like said earlier, I'd never be judgmental about anybody else. I think life for us changes when we learn to see the dance and not the dancer, which means we then start exploring and experiencing things not because it comes with a recommendation, not because it's well known, not because it's popular, not because it's in a particular setting, but a lot of these uncut diamonds out there we start experiencing because we are now exploring anything and everything around us unfiltered. And you don't know when you might stumble upon something which is just fabulous. Now, it doesn't mean that if something is set in a particular form, it should not be experienced. No, that's not what I'm saying. uh, Obviously, some of the very well-known artists and the shows that are performed in the big auditoriums, of course we must go and experience that as well. There's no question about it. But here was an example of what Washington Post put out there as an experiment, that one of the world's most renowned artists performed in a setting that was completely out of context, and we would have just passed uh, him in like 10 seconds. And by the way, his name, as I recall, is was Joshua Bell. Yeah, Joshua Bell is the one who performed. So that is really what the essence of the whole reflection was, that how do we condition and train ourselves to see the dance and not the dancer?
The essence of what you just said is, that we keep focusing, it's all about the power of focusing on the experience rather than the personality. Now, in our daily lives, where do we end up making this mistake of being focused on the personality? And I know at my workplace, I sometimes get to have, you know, judgments about who can actually share that. So, have you come across these things where we end up making a mistake, or your experiences around this?
Absolutely. And I think I've made as many mistakes as anybody else, where what happens is the past experiences with a person makes us believe that this person is capable of certain things or not. Second
Sure.
is certain designations automatically in our minds come with a certain capability. Both those statements could well be true, but they are not always true. And that really is my point. That if we hold that to be true all the time, then we will disregard or not give enough respect to something said by somebody whom either we don't hold in high regard, or who could be a relatively junior person. So I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as entrepreneurs is we don't listen deeply and carefully to everybody around the table all the time. And my own experience has been that sometimes some of the best ideas could come from the most unexpected people. Let me give you an example. Mahesh, who used to work in a courier company, asked us for a job. Long story short, he joined as a office boy, and today heads our entire spares division of more than 5,000 spare parts. And I was in the spare center with our technical head, and we had some obsolete spares because we, had stopped selling those tools. And I was standing there and I said, Robert, can't we do something about these obsolete spares? He said, no, we've stopped selling these models of tools, so difficult to liquidate these spares. And Mahesh, who was just listening to that conversation, very sheepishly said, Robert bhai, ये ट्रिगर पार्ट वो टूल में लग सकता है ना, that this particular part could also be used in another tool. And Robert thought for a minute and said, yeah, actually, he's right. We could use it over there. So if I was only seeing the dancer, then I would only be talking to my technical head. And I would say that, okay, he's been with me 24 years. He knows everything. I don't need to talk to anybody beyond him. But if I'm looking at the dance and I'm standing there and I'm saying, what's coming to me unfiltered? And in that conversation, Ajit, we got an answer which otherwise we would have lost out. The same thing has happened when I've been on holidays. Of course, when you go to a place, TripAdvisor and a lot of people will give you recommendations of things to see and do, which absolutely you must. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But wandering through the back streets, the unknown places of cities and towns, I have discovered some beautiful places, some lovely cafes, met some really nice people, right? So the experience of that place for me got enhanced because I wasn't looking for the form. I was looking for the substance. And I said the substance can come to me from the most unexpected places. It could be in the smallest and simplest things, it could be in the biggest things. It doesn't matter. Am I willing to step out of my prejudices and conditioning? And am I willing to experience life unfiltered?
Amazing. This also comes from, what you just said, that ego-driven judgments and biases. When you follow that standard method, where you just follow these judgments and biases, you tend to miss the bigger picture. How, I mean, from your experience, doesn't ego distract us from seeing this larger picture and, missing out on all these things? Now, my question comes, is this, how can we actually strategize ourselves to, often sometimes to say that, hey, listen, you need to break away from this and get into this. How do you actually go about doing this? Because in a regular daily life, it just plays out. It's very difficult sometimes for reflecting at every moment that you do.
It to my mind, Ajit, it comes from three things. It comes from understanding ourselves, understanding the world, and understanding our relationship with the world. When we understand ourselves, we realize that the ego is a limiting factor and there is an expansiveness within which we are capable of. And that in itself kind of, changes the way we perceive things. When we understand the world, we realize that nothing in the world is big or small. Everything is. When we give it the color of big or small, when we start saying, oh, wow, or okay, ordinary, I think everything in its own way is exceptional, right? Now, that's a paradigm which we live with. And then when we understand the third aspect, what is our relationship with the world? I can either interact with the world in its form and say that, okay, if somebody is popular, if somebody is successful, if something is well known, then I will engage with it. Otherwise, I don't want to waste my time. I could either take that route, or I could say that my interaction and experience and relationship with the world is to just experience whatever comes my way to its fullest. So, a conversation with a taxi driver on my way to the airport could be as meaningful as a conversation with a CEO who's sitting next to me in a business conference. They may be two different conversations, could be on two different subjects, but I have learned a lot about human nature, human life, human realities, chatting with the taxi drivers, as I have about business talking to CEOs. So if I'm only looking at the dancer, then I'm looking at, okay, who am I talking to? Is he successful? Is he important? Is he worth talking to? Yes. Oh, this person is only this, then, I don't need to engage with this person. So that partly comes from my ego of judging people, uh, which is a limiting factor. But if I say, look, everything in this world is worth experiencing or at least getting to understand, and then I decide whether I want to re-engage or not. So I think it comes down to understanding ourselves, understanding the world, and our relationship with the world.
Vivek, when I was actually putting this podcast through and building the content, when I took your reflections, I thought I should just read a little more. And I came across a very interesting note, which was
Hmm.
written in a blog. It
Hmm.
said, viewing the dance as a reflection of one's inner work and spiritual growth, uh, is all about, is about, let me repeat this again. Reviewing the dance is a reflection of one's inner work and spiritual growth,
Hmm.
and how focusing on the external self can distract from this deeper journey. And I thought
Yeah.
that was very deep in his thought process when it came from a spiritual angle,
Hmm.
and how much your basic core values can actually help you do this. Do you also have a similar kind of an outlook that it all comes in at the end of the day who you are and how you actually train yourself regularly, just not for one, but in a generic way of life?
So, you know, whether it be sports, whether it be business, or whether it be a spiritual journey, it's always work in progress. It's a continuous improvement program, and it's a process of discovery. When we limit ourselves with filters in our own thinking, we are actually, you know, uh, it's like using a telescope but using the wrong end of the telescope. Everything starts becoming very narrow. When we actually expand our view of life, we open opportunities for ourselves, and that's what we want in life, right? On one hand, we complain that we're not getting enough opportunities, or on the other hand, we look at people who've got great opportunities and wonder how did they do certain things. But when life is giving us this universe of opportunities, then why are we hooked onto the form? Why aren't we willing to see the substance in everything that life is offering us? Okay. It's not just, you know, a meal in a Michelin star restaurant that can be the most fulfilling. It doesn't mean that a Michelin star meal is not fulfilling. Of course it is. I'm not saying it isn't. But I'm saying that's not the only place where you can get a fabulous meal. You might get one of the best meals in a roadside dhaba, if you're somewhere in North India, okay, or a good South Indian meal in a Murugan Idli house. And I'm saying that the substance is what we need to start resonating with. It opens a new world for us. So you're right, and that's true for our spiritual journey as well.
Absolutely. Now, for entrepreneurs, I can tell you from my personal experience, you know, sometimes it is the people right at he's not an MBA, he probably must be even an undergraduate, but he's done that job for non-stop repetitively for 15, 20 years. And he might not interact with you, but some of the best ideas for business or the problems or process development comes from that guy because
Yeah,
he's lived that for 20 years, done it. So he tells you what's the best thing for that. And I guess
yeah.
sometimes opening up that mind just helps you build a better business or even get a new business idea for all.
And Ajit, for me, it's also been a great relationship building paradigm, because then I'm not anchored to who is right, but what is right. If I'm
Absolutely.
anchored to who is right, then I'm looking at the dancer. But if I'm anchored to what is right, then I'm looking at the dance, what is being said. You know.
Amazing. Well, that's what we have time today for. Some thought provoking discussions that we've had. We would encourage you to just not keep these ideas to yourself. Share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and family and get a conversation going and see where it leads. And we'd love to hear from you. Join the dialogue on our social media platforms. Share your questions, your learnings, and the insights you've gained from this episode. It's through these shared experiences and perspectives that we all grow and learn. That's it for today. And join us again next week for another enriching episode on Life.ev, where we continue our exploration into the fascinating world of exploring values in our life. Thank you, Vivek. Thanks for joining us every week and giving these deep insights. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ajit. Take care.
Thanks a lot.